Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. For more than 150 years, ours has been a congregation of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom, many spiritual paths, and many identities. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, your hopes for our world are welcome here. Our doors are closed because our hearts are open, living our values of care and compassion for each other and our community. You can still join us online every Sunday, and next Sunday, September 13th, we kick off our fall year and our annual water communion. We start our new premiere time on YouTube at 9 a.m. next week, so set your clocks. It'll be available then or anytime after that on YouTube or Facebook. So you can see it then and see your e-news to send in pictures or send in words for the water communion service. And then you can join us here at the church in the lower parking lot from 11 to noon next week for a drive-through mini service. You can bring water to pour in a communal bowl. You can bring offering to give to our offering on a stick. You can listen to a little bit of music and receive a church at home kit with a chalice, a meditation manual, and a journal, and Spirit Kid kits for families as well. So join us next Sunday at 9 a.m. online and at 11 o'clock in the lower parking lot. We hope to see you then. And this fall, we invite you to find at least one way or more to stay connected. We'll continue online coffee hours Sundays at 10:15, Wednesday forums at 6:30 beginning next week. Chalice circles and many other classes and small groups will be forming and reforming again this fall. You can also sign up for an in-person tailgate coffee hour small group, Sundays starting September 20th through the end of October or whenever it gets too cold to do so. You can see your e-news to register for those or for more information. And today's offering goes to support the mission of our church. Thank you for your generosity to keep our church thriving. You can give at uurochmn.org/give. Finally, in the words of the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes, minister of this church in the 1870s, may our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together.
This is the Unitarian Universalist Church. This is the Church of the Flaming Chalice. This is the Church of the Open Mind. This is the Church of the Loving Heart, where friends come together and share.
Growing up, September always felt like the start of a new year. My parents both taught at the university, so between their schedules and mine, there was a sense of new beginnings, excitement, and an anticipation of what was to come. The theme this month, chosen in the before times, is renewal, which fits that sense of a fresh start. Or did. Classes have begun or will shortly, but it all feels different. For many, working from home and learning from home has sort of muddled the boundaries of our days. Labor Day is seen as a marker for the end of summer, and in the past, I never really thought that much about its meaning. But Labor Day was declared a federal holiday in 1894 to celebrate and value the role of workers. And this year, I think, has been a year for conversations about work and workers, who we value, what we value, who we need, and it has stripped away the facade of our modern society. Activist and writer Adrienne Marie Brown wrote, "Things aren't getting worse, they're getting uncovered. We must continue to hold each other tight and pull back the veil." That led me to think about that theme again, renewal. I think the optimist in me is hoping that out of the ashes of 2020, a phoenix of sort will rise again and that we can rebuild our society to be more fair and more just. That we can recognize that we need one another and we need to value all the ways that people contribute.
Happy September! A new month means a new theme for all of us to explore, and this month we'll be exploring what it means to be a people or a community of renewal. I hope that this book will give you an idea of what renewal can look like when we wake up each and every morning. Somewhere in the World Right Now by Stacy Schuett. Somewhere in the world right now, it's deepest night. Fog hugs the shoulders of the buildings and bridges. A baker slides long loaves of bread into an oven. Somewhere, somebody watches a movie. A mouse hunts for crumbs. Somewhere else, in a velvety darkness, elephants sleep standing up, swaying gently from side to side. Whales breach and dive in the sea, singing their low, sweet songs. Penguins press close to their chicks to keep them warm. Somewhere, the night wind sighs and murmurs. The moon shines through a window. A little girl dreams of tomorrow. But somewhere else right now, tomorrow is already here. Dawn is breaking, a rooster crows, and people are waking up. Somewhere it's morning. Families eat breakfast, kids get dressed for school, farmers leave for the fields to tend their crops. Birds stretch their wings and sing. A boy hides a note for a friend to find. People go to work, stores open. Another day has begun. And somewhere right now, people buy food for their midday meal. A carpenter measures wood. A dog runs off with his lunch. In the late morning shade, a baby kangaroo naps. A koala munches eucalyptus leaves. Somewhere in the world right now, fishing boats return with their catch. Seagulls swoop and dive and bicker over scraps. Somewhere, the afternoon sun gilds workers in the vineyards. Cows graze and rest in the grass. A girl tends her horses. Somewhere in the world right now, the sun is setting. Monkeys screech from the trees as a jaguar glides through the jungle. Parrots mutter and chuckle. Shadows grow long. And somewhere else, the sun has already slipped away, drawing evening down like a shade. In the city, signs flash on and off and on. Trains whoosh through the tunnels, taking people home. Somewhere, suddenly, houses light up. A girl and her brother race each other to the door. The day's work is done. A family sits down to supper. And somewhere else, night has fallen. Clouds cushion the moon as it climbs across the sky. An alligator sleeps in an inky swamp beneath a tapestry of stars. The last notes of a song fade into the rhythm of the waves. Somewhere, a truck driver follows her headlights down a lonely road. A night watchman starts his shift. Friends say goodnight. Somewhere, somebody reads a story, and somebody listens. Voices whisper sweet dreams, and under a blanket of night, lights go out, one by one, somewhere in the world, right now. Renewal can be something as simple as how you feel in the morning and what your day is going to look like. This week, we'll be exploring a big question. And the big question is, what do you look forward to when you get up in the morning? I mean, with the pandemic and everything crazy in the world right now, it's more important than ever to take a look and see what you look forward to throughout the day. What renews your soul?
It is good to be with you. We are still separated by space and time, but we are still together, and we gather in a virtual way as we continue to create a place of communal caring and connection. Be enriched by the virtual presence of each other, and draw yourself closer into the heart of love at this time of service and reflection. In this time together, we ask that our minds be open, our hearts welcoming, our arms embracing. We honor all who support us in this caring, loving, and all-inclusive ministry. We send gratitude to Shayna Johnson, serving as our caring coordinator for the last week, arranging care for our members and friends in need. Phyllis Beery will take over tomorrow for the next week, and we thank her for that. The members of our caring committee are wonderful examples of our compassionate community, holding us up as we go through these uncertain times. And as we continue through this time of staying at home, many of us may need additional care, whether it be pastoral care, grocery delivery, or an errand run. And we encourage you to reach out to Reverend Luke or myself with that request. We thank all of you who have served our congregation in this way during this challenging time. In this community, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person here has value. Each person's experience matters. We lift up those whose lives are touched by sadness, by illness, by worry, or by loneliness. We revel in those who are celebrating joys in their lives. May their happiness lift us all. May all of us find comfort, hope, joy, and healing strength in this community. We hold John and Harriet Hodgson so tight in our hearts this morning. They share the sad news that John has been diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer, which has spread to many parts of his body. He will be cared for by Mayo Oncology in hopes of treatment, pain relief, and comfort. Harriet shares that she is so grateful that she and John were able to celebrate their 63rd wedding anniversary together. We lift them up in love and strength as they go through this difficult time. Please hold them tight in your thoughts. We send Elizabeth Plumhoff healing vibes. During one of her walks last week, she met an uneven spot in the pavement, which resulted in a black eye and some broken fingers. Beth had surgery on Tuesday to repair the damage in her hand, and we hope for a speedy recovery for her and that she will be back to her daily walks soon. And we share the good news that our own co-director of music, Joe Mish, has been selected as the 2020 recipient of the Semyo Bravara Music Educator Award because of his long-standing commitment to teaching and music. This award is a celebration of music education and the positive impact it has had on the community. Well deserved, and congratulations to you, Joe. As we have over these last few months, we need to continue to reach out to all in our community to let them know that we are still here and still holding and supporting them. We encourage you to send cards and make calls to those you love and support local businesses, opening the doors of communication and community. May the faith and the spirit of life love for the community of earth, and love for the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come.
I invite you to breathe deep the breath of life, remembering how precious that is right now. Remember how precious this moment is to pause, center down, feel beneath you the earth in its ancient turning, feel above you the sky and the stars with their ancient light shining, holding you here between. I invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life, source of love, God of 1,000 names and beyond all naming. We gather here in this house where all are named and known as beloved. We gather at thresholds in the heart between today and who knows what, thresholds online, in person, of school and work and home, thresholds of hope and despair, the thresholds between what is and what yet may be. So often those at the thresholds, the custodians, the teachers, the clerks, the shelvers, all those deemed essential, yet with paychecks that don't reflect it. So often they have such little choice and little power and bear the brunt of an unsettled economy, unsettled social structures, an unsettled country and world. May we treat these thresholds of the year and these thresholds, these people at those thresholds, like angels at those doors, with as much gratitude and grace and advocacy and attention as we can muster. For all those healthcare workers making rounds, for all those teachers spacing out desks or trying to connect through a screen, for all those sanitation workers on the streets in every building, putting their health at risk for the health of all, may we all do our part to keep each other safe and well. May we surround them in love from as much distance as we can, and cross those thresholds in spirit together. We hold all those who are suffering in mind, in body, or spirit. We hold all those that are crossing thresholds into new routines and school years and work schedules and all of the uncertainty and grief and fear that comes with that. I invite you to bring the names you're holding in your own heart this day in joy or in sorrow, celebration or concern, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. For all the names that are spoken, unspoken, may we be forever grateful for this fabric of love and of life that weaves us together. May those threads hold us all in love and grace and strength and hope. These words of meditation come from the poet Grace Paley. She writes, I was going to write a poem. I made a pie instead. It took about the same amount of time. Of course, the pie was a final draft. A poem would have had some distance to go, days and weeks and much crumpled paper. The pie already had a talking, tumbling audience among small trucks and a fire engine on the kitchen floor. Everybody will like this pie. It will have apples and cranberries and dried apricots in it. Many friends will say, why in the world did you make only one? This does not happen with poems, she writes. Because of unreportable sadness, I decided to settle this morning for a responsive eatership. I do not want to wait a week, a year, a generation for the right consumer to come along. May we all remember the essential things in this world, using whatever skills we have to create poems or pies, whether we work with pencils or pipes or 1,000 other tools. May we build a world of beauty and dignity and love, and receive the gifts from others in grace. Amen.
The first reading is The End of Summer by Rachel Haydas. Sweet smell of phlox drifting across the lawn, an early warning of the end of summer. August is fading fast, and by September, the little purple flowers will all be gone. Season, project, and vacation done. One more year of everybody's life. Add a notch to the old hunting knife. Time keeps testing with a horny thumb. Over the summer months hung an unspoken aura of urgency. In late July, galactic pulsings filled the midnight sky like silent screaming, so that, strangely woken, we looked at one another in the dark, then at the milky, magical debris arcing across, dwarfing our meek mortality. There were two ways to live: get on with work, redeem the time, ignore the imminence of cataclysm, or else take it slow, be as tranquil as the neighbor's cow we love to tickle through the barbed wire fence. She paces through her days in massive innocence, or seeing green pastures we imagine so. In fact, not being cows, we have no choice. Summer or winter, country, city, we are prisoners from the start and automatically hemmed in, harangued by the one clamorous voice. Not light, but language shocks us out of sleep. Ideas of doom transformed to meteors we translate back to portents of the wars looming above the nervous watch we keep. The second reading is Hope, an Owner's Manual by Barbara Kingsolver. Look, you might as well know this thing is going to take endless repair. Rubber bands, crazy glue, tapioca, the square of the hypotenuse, 19th century novels, heartstrings, sunrise, all of these things are useful. Also, feathers. To keep it humming, sometimes you have to stand on an incline where everything looks possible. On the line you drew yourself, or in the grocery line, making faces at a toddler secretly over his mother's shoulder. You might have to pop the clutch and run past all the evidence, past everyone who is laughing or praying for you. Definitely you don't want to go directly to jail. But still, here you go, passing time, passing strange. Don't pass this up. In the worst of times, you will have to pass it off. Park it and fly by the seat of your pants. With nothing in the bank, you'll still want to take the express. Tiptoe past the dogs of the apocalypse that are sleeping in the shade of your future. Pay at the window, pass your hope like a bad check. You might still have just enough time to make a deposit.
Sometimes it's not as clear-cut as it should be. One day you gather for a march of liberation, of the unions and the workers, escorted by semi-trucks of Teamsters alongside teachers and nurses and electricians, marching side by side with police officers. And a few days later, you gather for another march of liberation, greeted by militarized police in riot gear, a different crowd there for the dignity and the liberation of Black lives. Another day, you march for liberation with thousands and thousands across the country with pink hats for the liberation of women. Another day, you march for liberation for our lives, now with the local police force again for gun control. Why are we marching, Papa? The question is asked. For people to live more safely, for people to live more free, for people to be treated with dignity and respect, for people to have fair wages and working conditions. We're always marching for more and more people to live in a better and better world. We're always marching for liberation, because liberation means all of us. Over the summer months hung an unspoken aura of urgency, writes the poet. Not writing about right now technically, but totally writing about right now. She says there were two ways to live. Get on with work, redeem the time, ignore the imminence of cataclysm, or else take it slow. Be as tranquil as the neighbor's cow. An aura of urgency this summer, of unrest, both familiar and new, and how to respond to the ways capitalism has not served us well. Those on the side of get on with the work and ignore the imminence of cataclysm, and those on the side of take it slow. So often we forget. We forget who we put in harm's way all the time, and especially right now, who we call essential, those we have never valued in our social structures, those essential workers in healthcare, in infrastructure, in education, in agriculture, in food distribution, and shelving, and cooking, and cleaning, all these entry-level jobs below humane wages, because we tend to get the pay scales flipped or backwards here of what we reward and what we don't. We forget how interconnected we are, literally, how much we're dependent on electricians and plumbers and truckers and teachers and nurses and custodians and postal carriers, all of us. The Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh writes, all our ancestors and all future generations are present in us. Liberation is not an individual matter. As long as the ancestors in us are still suffering, we cannot be happy, and we will transmit their suffering to our children and their children. Now is the time to liberate our ancestors, he writes, and future generations. It means to free ourselves. If we can take one step freely, happily, touching the earth mindfully, then we can take 100. We do it for ourselves and for previous and future generations. Liberation is not an individual matter. Access to health care and fair wages is not an individual matter. The right to live free, to not be harassed or viewed as suspicious because of your skin color is not an individual matter. Equal pay for equal work is not an individual matter. It's our cultural confusion, our social unsettlement, our spiritual individualism that limits our ability to understand and to realize that these systems of oppression, of marginalization, are set up in such a way that poor people, working people, marginalized people begin to believe they are enemies of one another. and that the liberation of one somehow means the detriment of the other. So you say Black lives matter, and they respond, all lives matter. There's a disconnect there. That speaking affirmatively of one somehow discounts the rest. That's why we end up with a different crowd gathered in the streets for what should be uniting. Some for this, some for that, but when it comes down to it, we know our collective liberation has to be bound together. And that is this tradition's whole theological premise, universal salvation, this old theological term, not in some afterlife, though. It's never meant that entirely. But heaven on earth, heaven here and now, and how we create beloved community, how we love our neighbor, and how we make living hell or living heaven right now on this side of the grave. It is collective. It is together. No souls overboard. It was access to union-backed health care that made our first daughter possible at all. That's why we had her in this shirt, in this picture, union made, and we taught her early the phrase, what's disgusting? Union busting. And at the same time, I remember growing up knowing that for owners of a small plumbing shop in rural Minnesota, for my family, unions were a mixed bag. Yes, good wages and benefits, but if the union decided to strike, it was terrifying. They couldn't imagine how they could keep their business afloat, their families afloat, pay their bills. And the point is that people shouldn't be forced to have to make that choice. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. This liberation song that Austin and Joe played for us, rooted in the women's suffrage movement as we celebrate the anniversary of votes for women, and this particular song and poem rooted in a successful textile strike in 1912 in Massachusetts, spoken by activist Helen Todd, believing in the necessity of both fair wages and dignified conditions for working. Wages for bread, roses for conditions. Because we know the type of work we do, no matter what it is, yes, should be paid well, generously, and yes, should be given the dignity it deserves. To know what we do, who we are, what we contribute to this world is worthy and meaningful and important, and we keep learning as we go. We keep learning that even these movements for liberation were still siloed, that the women's suffrage movement failed hopelessly when it came to many issues of class and especially race. You might as well know, writes Barbara Kingsolver, this thing is going to take endless repair. Rubber bands, crazy glue, tapioca, the square of the hypotenuse, 19th century novels, heartstrings, sunrise, all of these are useful, she writes, but to keep it humming, sometimes you have to stand on an incline where everything looks possible. You might have to pop the clutch and run past all the evidence. Every Labor Day, I'm reminded of workers in my own and my wife's families. Plumbers, teachers, installers, mechanics, workers, and the occasional pastor thrown in here and there for good measure, whose only technical union is the family of All Souls. But in particular, I remember my grandpa Royer, a plumber and mechanic who I've spoken about many times, who passed away this winter. He taught me to drive a stick shift in a 1928 pickup that he restored himself. A car that needed endless repair that he knew how to do over the years. And I remember one of the first times I was in the car with him when I was 16. I stalled it, of course. I stalled it a lot, with a clutch and a pedal and a brake about a foot off the floor in those old cars. Once it was in the middle of Main Street, which was also Highway 169 in Winnebago, where he lived and the place I loved. a small town, luckily, so there wasn't much traffic. But mostly what I remember is that whenever I stalled it, and this time in particular on the highway, as I became certain inside, quietly, of our impending doom when that engine turned off, that some semi-truck was surely going to come out of nowhere and just destroy this little pickup, he quietly and simply repeated simple instructions to me, calmly, slowly. He just said, spark up, throttle down, clutch, starter. And then I would do that. And if it churned or sputtered as my anxiety increased, he would just say, pull the choke. He knew it would stall. I remember those phrases many years later, just like that. Spark up, throttle down, clutch, starter. Pull the choke. It would stall for him sometimes, too. It was the nature of those engines. And he knew what to do to keep it going or to try again, or the times it would overheat on the side of the road or in a parade, and he'd just push it off to the side in neutral, watching the rest of the parade or the traffic go by and just wait while the engine cooled. Sometimes you have to pop the clutch and run past all the evidence, writes the poet. You know, there's a lot of evidence right now that we could just stall out at any moment, like we're in the ashes, as Beth spoke of today. That we could just stall out, stuck right in the middle of the highway, but if we remember, we're sitting in the cab together, our futures bound together side by side, which is too easy to forget when we're isolated as much as we are right now. We remember and we know that generations have passed down enough wisdom to let us know how to keep going, not flustered by the stalls and the stops, but a steady presence right next to us, even and especially when we're stuck. The ancestors sitting right there with us. They remind us of the things we already know within, that this will take endless repair. And we need as many tools and skills as we've got collectively, including superglue and fresh-baked pie and immense patience. We need teachers, long past, but always sitting right next to us, who know how to keep starting the work and moving forward no matter how many times we stall, no matter how many times we have to remember what comes next and start it all up again and again. On Wednesday nights, when we were able to gather, we would bless our communal meals in the commons with the hymn that has been played today. So I offer you that slightly adapted, but to think about those places where you're gathering, whether you're gathering through a screen or over the phone or in your heart, sharing meals and all the work that goes into those shared meals and moments. Give thanks for the sun, for the water and land, for the love in our hearts and the work of our hands, for the table that's set and this meal that we share. Let us hold one another in love and in care. Amen.